So it's a tax credit.
Good morning. I see I got my Bible study group here. Pray that we don't screw this up. It's great to be here, and we're going to kind of conduct this in Oprah-style fashion. And I just want to give a little background, and then we'll hear from the President of the Senate and then the Speaker. And let me kind of put this into context. There's a handful of people that are here this morning who started meeting with me about, I don't know, 3.5 years ago, maybe a little longer than that. Just thinking about how we solve the problems that Ohio has, and we started meeting long before I even decided to become a candidate. And I give them a lot of credit because they were the pioneers in putting a package together. And what's pretty amazing is the way we looked at things years ago came out to be eerily similar to how they ultimately evolved. And so we dug in, and then I decided to run, and then we got a lot more aggressive. People like Wayne Struble, Ben Kanzig, really critical in this. And then, of course, one of the major gets we got was Tim Keene. And somebody said to me that I needed to have a meeting with Tim Keene, and I said, well, he's the enemy. He caused these problems we have. And they said, oh, no, he's really a good guy. So I had a meeting with him, and I asked him if he understood that if he came inside the tent, that there was like no getting out. And I told him to think about it. So he took about 10 days, and I kept checking. Well, did he call back? And no, he hasn't. And finally he called back. He said, yeah, I want to be part of the team. And his joining brought a lot of credibility and took a lot of the out-of-the-box thinking that we had and brought some reality to what we needed to do. Look, when we made a commitment to deliver as I like to say, a new way and a new day, and basically we stripped all the politics out of the decision making. I remember Jerry Ray, who is our Director of Transportation. I think he's probably here today. I kept talking about all these things we wanted to do, and he'd kind of go along with it, and then at times he'd blurt out, well, you can't do this, this is not possible, blah, blah, blah. I called him the other day once the Senate passed the budget. Is Jerry here?
He's right back here.
Yes. I'm going to change his name to Thomas. You get what I mean. Anyway, and Bob Blair, my dear friend, Craig, you were involved way back in the very beginning of this also, Bob, and Joe Robertson, who you might remember, we've lost since we started it. So a lot of people thought that the wanting to not have a tax increase was an ideological deal, and it really was not ideological at all. Ohio is just not competitive, and we knew that if we raised taxes, we would drive ourselves further into the hole. And in fact, the need to reorganize the government, reform the government, and reduce taxes and make us more competitive really makes sense. And Speaker and I talked the other night. He called me excitedly to say that Ohio, according to Squawk Box on CNBC, has jumped 11 spaces here, and Bill will talk about that a little bit more. But the idea that we wanted to become business friendly, that we got a cabinet that joined us that was really interested in being business friendly, which we put together in light of all the other budget reforms we were doing, is what worked. And then I had the great privilege to be able to spend time with Tom Niehaus and Bill Batchelder, and I would say we have built a relationship, both professional and personal, that's really pretty unique. They heard all my talk. I don't know how much they believed of it, but they gave us a chance to try to execute. And as we did the major reforms in the budget, I think we were able to show on an intellectual level that these ideas made sense. And the power of ideas changes history, frankly. It has throughout history. And the power of these ideas put together by this great team that I was able to get put together put us in a position where we had a lot of good ideas. And when you take a look at how we started and we moved, I remember when the press covered the first 100 days, it was like, wow, how did all these things get done? And now we're, what, 5.5 months into this, and I was talking to a reporter last night, and I said to her, can you believe everything that is in this budget? She said, no, we're having a hard time describing it because it's so comprehensive. And I would submit that the budget that's been put together is probably the most comprehensive piece of legislation in breadth and depth and scope that we've seen in modern times. I mean, when you think about what is in here, we of course did not raise taxes, we actually cut taxes. Now, so you eliminate the death tax, which people in the state have wanted for a long time. Farmers, small business people, it really just seems to touch a real nerve. And the House put that in there, and Bill came to me one night and said, what do you think? And I said, well, I see no reason why we wouldn't do it. We were able to preserve the income tax cut because it's critical for small business and for our competitiveness to lower that tax. And then at the same time, Invest Ohio, which people say really hasn't had any hearings. According to the Speaker, it's had a whole series of hearings over the years. The idea of Invest Ohio is basically to attract capital inside of our state because capital flows out rather than flows in. If you talk to business people all over this state, whether they're minority business people or majority business people, they will tell you they have great difficulty getting money, getting capital to expand their businesses. And by being in a position to encourage investment inside the state, particularly as it's aimed at small business, we wanted to do it much larger. I mean, really what we wanted to do was to encourage somebody who had built a very significant company to be able to cash in on that company, pay no taxes, and yet invest in an Ohio company and pay no taxes on the gain. The reason we didn't do it is because there's a constitutional issue. Other states have moved forward, but because of Tom and Bill and the House and the Senate, which has refined all of our products, we narrowed this. Now, it's pretty crazy that it's a constitutional issue, and if we need to expand it, we will once litigation has occurred in other states. But we think this gives us a real jump on things. And of course, Jobs Ohio is going to allow us to do some things that we can't do inside the government, and is going to give us an ability to attract the best and the brightest. We're going to have an exciting announcement about the board of directors. I think people will be very impressed with who's going to be on that board. And of course, to move the liquor money, which has been in the state of Ohio since I think the 1930s, into Jobs Ohio to give them the resources they need to hire good people and do the things that they need to do quickly, I think is really fantastic. We also asked all the cabinet to come together and come up with a 10 or a 15% cut. And they all did. I mean, Jim Zeringer, who's here, he came up with about 15%. Harvey did a terrific job in coming. Everybody came up with their savings, but we also balanced it out. You start at 15% or you start at 10%, but you don't want to hurt anybody. I mean, that was really a bottom line. We're not going to hurt the most vulnerable in our society. So we would add stuff back into the budgets just to make sure that, and frankly, I've got to tell you, we got to monitor the changes that we've made. One of the areas that I have to tell you about, where I think we scored a real cultural change, is in the area of letting mothers and fathers stay in their own home. Now, we've got to be very careful, and I've talked to Tom and Bill about this. We're going to monitor nursing homes. Greg Moody is going to be doing it on a regular basis. If we have to do more to help them, we will. But we also think consolidation is needed in that industry, but we've had a sea change in terms of this great program to let moms and dads stay at home. I also want to tell you, I think there was a cultural change when Tracy Plout was able to go to Cleveland and propose not building a hospital, yet pouring more money and fixing a current hospital in Summit County. We saved $4 million in operating and no capital improvements for the next 4 years. And this was a seminal moment too, because Tracy got support inside of her agency, and it was clear we weren't going to play politics from pushback from political types that wanted to just beat us up. That goes with the territory. Very proud of what we've done in Medicaid. Greg Moody, the Office of Health Transformation, it's a unique entity. We have a lot of work to do on that. And what Greg Moody will tell you is this is just step one. But to think about saving billions of dollars in Medicaid, and yet having the support of people who represent the advocates for the developmentally disabled, the mentally ill, and the AARP came in to offer their strong support for what we have done in this budget. It's pretty remarkable. And we did it by focusing on that 6% that drives over 50% of the cost for Medicaid, and by giving them care coordinators, which is absolutely the most compassionate way to deal with health care costs. The private sector community has endorsed this. The reason they have is because they believe we are forward-looking on health care, and it's our goal, my goal, to make Ohio better than Minnesota on health care. Now that's a big task because they're the leaders. But we want to bring, and I'm proud that Greg and his team and Dr. Winslow and our Director of Aging, Bonnie, they're working together great. But they've got a lot of work to do, and we're going to continue to do it.